There are children who speak loudly, children who run freely, and children whose laughter fills every room they enter. But Elias Marquez was different. He grew up in a small coastal town in the Philippines, where the ocean whispered against the shore like a lullaby that never ended. Elias rarely spoke more than a few words, yet his silence was never empty. It carried weight, softness, and a kind of hidden sadness that only a few ever noticed. His mother, Amara, felt it every day. She had raised him alone since the night the sea took his father away during a sudden storm. Elias was too young to understand what death meant, but he felt the loneliness that followed. It lingered around him like an invisible fog, shaping the quiet boy he became. Their home was small, a single room, wooden walls, and a window that opened toward the water. Every morning, Amara woke before sunrise, tying her hair back as she prepared for another long day selling fish at the market. Elias, still a child, would watch her leave with tired eyes that were far older than his age. It was during those moments of early dawn, when the world felt softer and slower, that he discovered something that would change his life. An old violin. It belonged to his father, a man he barely remembered but longed for every day. The wood was worn, the strings old, but the moment Elias touched it, something stirred inside him. A feeling he couldn't explain. A warmth that felt like coming home. He began playing in secret at first, hiding behind the window where the wind carried his sound away. He made mistakes. Many. But every note, even the broken ones, seemed to pull a little sadness out of him. Over time, the violin became more than an instrument. It became his voice. His refuge. His silent prayer. Neighbors often said they heard music drifting through the air, soft and fragile like a child's heartbeat. Most didn't know where it came from. But Amara did. Every night, exhausted yet hopeful, she paused outside their door. Listening to her son pour his soul into the world, one trembling note at a time. Years passed, and Elias grew into a quiet young man whose world was still shaped by the same small coastline and the same old violin. His life was simple, school, chores, and music. But in his heart, he carried something far bigger than his surroundings. Every evening, he played by the shore, letting the breeze carry his melodies to anyone who happened to pass. Children sometimes stopped to listen. Fishermen paused while folding their nets. Tourists recorded short clips, mesmerized by the boy who played as if his soul lived inside the strings. One evening, a group of college students visiting from Manila stopped near him. They were touched, some even teared up, because the way Elias played "Nearer, My God," to the felt like a prayer carried by the waves. One of them recorded him, not with the intention of making him famous, but simply because the moment felt too beautiful to keep for themselves. But beauty has its own way of traveling far. Within days, the video spread across social media. It reached strangers who sat alone in their rooms, nurses working night shifts, overseas Filipinos missing their families, and people grieving quiet battles they never talked about. Something in Elias's playing touched them, reminded them of loss, hope, and forgiveness all at once. Then came the message. A short email. Simple words. But enough to change everything. He had been invited to audition for America's Got Talent. At first, he thought it was a mistake. A scam. A dream he would eventually wake from. But Amara held the letter with trembling hands, and for the first time in years, Elias saw tears fall from her eyes, not from exhaustion, but from pride. A short email. Simple words. But enough to change everything. He had been invited to audition for America's Got Talent. At first, he thought it was a mistake. A scam. A dream he would eventually wake from. But Amara held the letter with trembling hands, and for the first time in years, Elias saw tears fall from her eyes, not from exhaustion, but from pride. The days that followed were filled with preparations neither of them ever imagined making: passport applications, borrowed luggage, a community quietly collecting what little they could to help. When Elias stepped onto the airplane, he carried only two things: his father's old violin, and a hope far larger than his small fishing town. Ahead of him waited a world he had only seen through a screen: bright lights, big dreams, and a stage that could change his life forever. The theater was brighter and louder than anything Elias had ever experienced. Massive screens, shining lights, thousands of seats. A world built for giants, and he felt impossibly small in the center of it. Backstage, the noise pulsed like a heartbeat, crew members moving quickly, contestants warming up, cameras circling like restless birds. But inside Elias, everything was still. He clutched his violin close, the same one his father once held, its wood smooth from years of practice. It was the single familiar thing in a place filled with the unfamiliar. When his name was finally called, he stepped forward with slow, hesitant footsteps. And as he walked toward the stage, it felt as though the world narrowed into a tunnel made of light and breathless anticipation. He stood beneath the massive AGT logo, the judges facing him from afar, Simon Cowell, stern and unreadable, the others watching with curiosity. The crowd stirred, whispering, adjusting, waiting to see what the quiet young man from a distant country would do. A small tremble moved through Elias's hands, but when he lifted the violin, something changed. It was as if he stepped out of his body, leaving fear behind, stepping deeper into the place where only music existed. The bow touched the strings. And the first note floated out. Soft. Tender. Holy. The theater responded instantly. People sat straighter. Heads lifted. Breaths paused. The melody of "Nearer, My God," to Thee moved across the room like a whispered memory, gentle enough to calm a restless heart, strong enough to break one open. The lighting softened around him, framing him in a warm glow as if the stage itself understood the sacredness of the moment. Even from far away, faces changed, eyes softened, lips trembled, shoulders loosened. Then something unexpected happened. Simon Cowell, a man known for his sharpness and control, lowered his gaze. His face shifted with emotions he rarely let anyone see. The music touched places inside him that had long been locked away, places shaped by loss, regret, love, and the fragile threads of memory. Elias didn't know any of this. He simply played, letting every note carry his heart into the room. And for the first time that night, the massive theater felt completely still. As if the entire world had stopped. Just to listen. The deeper Elias moved into the song, the more the air in the theater changed. It felt heavier, as if every note carried pieces of memories people had tucked away long ago. The melody rose gently, then fell like a soft prayer, touching hearts with quiet honesty. The audience had forgotten they were part of a show. They weren't watching a performance anymore. They were witnessing something pure, something untouched by fame or competition. Elias's bow slid across the strings with trembling grace. Each vibration seemed to pull something out of him, years of sorrow, longing, hope, and the ache of growing up without a father. Even those who didn't know his story felt it. The music told it for him. The camera slowly turned toward the judges' table. One judge covered her mouth, eyes shimmering. Another blinked rapidly, fighting tears. But the most unexpected reaction came from the one person everyone thought was unshakable. Simon. He tried to stay composed. He sat back in his chair, arms crossed tightly, as if protecting himself from whatever was happening inside him. But the music kept breaking through. Note after note, it peeled away the layers he had built over years of loss, criticism, and the heavy weight of expectations. A single tear escaped before he could stop it. He wiped it quickly, hoping no one noticed. But the cameras did. The audience did. And Elias, still lost in the song, unknowingly touched the deepest part of a man who rarely let the world see his heart. When Elias reached the final section of the hymn, the theater felt like a sanctuary. People who had come to be entertained now found themselves grieving, healing, remembering. Some clasped their hands together as if in prayer. Others simply let the tears fall. The last note lingered in the air. Soft, trembling, and impossibly beautiful. Elias lowered his bow, chest rising with quiet breaths. For a moment, no one moved. No applause. No cheers. Just stunned silence. Then Simon slowly stood. His eyes were red, his voice stuck somewhere between breaking and breathing. He pressed a hand over his heart. And the entire room finally understood. Some performances are not just heard. They are felt. And this one had touched everyone. When Elias reached the final section of the hymn, the theater felt like a sanctuary. People who had come to be entertained now found themselves grieving, healing, remembering. Some clasped their hands together as if in prayer. Others simply let the tears fall. The last note lingered in the air. Soft, trembling, and impossibly beautiful. Elias lowered his bow, chest rising with quiet breaths. For a moment, no one moved. No applause. No cheers. Just stunned silence. Then Simon slowly stood. His eyes were red, his voice stuck somewhere between breaking and breathing. He pressed a hand over his heart. And the entire room finally understood. Some performances are not just heard. They are felt. And this one had touched everyone. Within hours, clips of his performance spread everywhere. Across televisions, across oceans, across hearts. It became more than entertainment, it became a moment people shared with their families, their friends, and even within their own quiet thoughts. A moment that reminded them of loved ones they missed, of faith they had forgotten, of dreams they had buried. Interviewers asked Simon afterward what had happened on stage. And he admitted, in the most honest way he could, that the boy's music had reached a place inside him he rarely allowed anyone to see. Elias didn't win the show that night. But he won something far greater. A purpose. A voice that reached beyond words. A path that stretched far beyond the borders of his small town. Months later, when he returned home, he walked straight to the shore. He lifted his violin and played softly as the wind carried the music out to sea. But this time, the notes were different. They were not born from sadness. They were born from gratitude. A boy who once played from pain was now playing from hope. And the world was still listening.